A Flash in the Dark, Chapter 14, Date Night. Iris panicked when she turned around and saw Barry was gone. She rushed around, searching for her sister as the police sirens began ringing in her ears. She raced outside and almost screamed when she saw Barry laying on the ground, eyes closed, limbs splayed out like she'd fallen. All Iris could think was what Barry had looked like laying lifeless on the overturned shelves in her lab that night she'd been struck. She rushed forward and quickly looked over her foster sister. There was no blood, no injury. She gently shook Barry's shoulder. "Barry! Barry!" Barry stirred and carefully sat up, holding her head. Iris helped her to her feet, Barry leaning against her heavily. Barry shook her head as she walked forward back into the building. Iris frowned as her father approached them. "Barry!" Joe began, sounding upset. Iris shook her head. "Dad, go easy on her. I found her outside on the ground." Iris said, hands shaking on Barry's shoulder. Barry nodded slightly, refusing to look at Joe, Eddie, or Iris. "I went after them to try and get the plates. I fainted," Barry admitted, rubbing her head. Eddie looked between the two girls, concern on his face. "Do you need me to get you a paramedic?" he offered. Barry shook her head. She wasn't sure what a paramedic could do for her, if anything, and was a bit afraid of being carted off for her rapid heart rate and other odd vitals. Then the guard nearby spoke about suddenly being whisked outside. Joe pulled her aside quietly. "You tried to stop those gunmen, didn't you?" Joe accused. Barry nodded. "They've got to be the same ones from the gun store," she reasoned. Joe frowned. "What are you going to do when you caught them? Ask them nicely to pull over? You're not bulletproof." Joe paused, looking Barry over. "Wait, are you?" he asked, sounding deadly serious. Barry shook her head. Joe's frown deepened. "All right, no more running after criminals. And Iris isn't stupid. Come up with a better excuse than 'I fainted,'" Joe said as he turned away from her. Barry was about to tell him that she actually had, but he was already walking away. She shook her head and pulled her phone out of her bag, clicking on Caitlin's contact info. She noticed a text from Len. She called Caitlin and gave her a quick overview of what had happened, and promised to be at Star Labs within the hour. She just had to give her statement to the police. Caitlin sounded pissed, but Barry had to talk to the police for a bit, so she didn't have time to listen to the rant now. It was 20 minutes later that Barry was in a cab on the way to Star Labs when she remembered the text from Len. She pulled her phone back out of her purse and smiled down at the text. "Thinking of you. Do you like Italian?" It read. Barry grinned. "Of course I like Italian. Who doesn't?" The reply took a few minutes. "Not anyone I would want to associate with. How does Italian sound tonight?" he asked. Barry frowned a little. "I can't tonight. I have a doctor's appointment, some follow-up stuff about my coma. How about tomorrow night?" she suggested. The reply was almost immediate. "Absolutely. Are you all right?" he asked. Barry sighed down at her phone, not quite knowing how to answer. "Hopefully. It's nothing big, just some dizzy spells. I gotta go. I'm there." Barry smiled as Len again replied almost immediately. "Let me know how it goes. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow." Len frowned down at his phone as he went back over the armored car schedules he'd managed to get his hands on. Lisa frowned at him. "Lenny, you seem upset. Your pretty brunette break it off?" she teased. Len shook his head as he clicked off his phone. "No, quite the opposite, in fact. We're meeting up tomorrow for Italian. She's just having some medical issues," he explained. Lisa raised a perfectly manicured eyebrow. "Oh yeah, wasn't she hit by a bus or something?" Lisa asked, shaking her head. Len shook his head. "Lightning, actually. Much more interesting," he said with a slight grin. Lisa rolled her eyes at her older brother. "That's right. You can't have a relationship that isn't interesting." "What did you say she does again?" she asked. Len shrugged. "Hasn't come up yet," he said, frowning. He should probably find that out soon. Unknown variables were dangerous. Lisa frowned. "'Cause you don't want to tell her she's dating a criminal?" Lisa asked with a slightly teasing tone. Len rolled his eyes, not looking up from the schedule. "I told her I work in art acquisition. not technically a lie. Len said, scrolling through the schedule for the armored delivery truck. The diamond wouldn't be in motion for long. Lisa rolled her eyes. Not really the truth, either. Bet she's another airhead like the last one, Lisa said, waving a finger at him. Len shook his head. Seems very intelligent, actually. We've been texting quite a bit over the past few days, Len said, waving his phone at his sister. Lisa raised her eyebrow again. Not really like you to keep up with a girl this long, especially when you aren't actually getting any. I mean, if she was a mark, it would make sense, but she just seems average from what you've told me, Lisa said, looking damn near intrigued. Len looked up from the papers in front of him. I don't know why, if I'm honest. There's just something different about her. She's interesting, sweet, smart, and yes, pretty. I don't know what I want out of it. Maybe more of her. I don't know yet. And not knowing makes me frustrated, Len admitted, setting down his phone. Lisa grinned. And frustration makes you curious. I need to meet this girl who's got you so worked up, Lenny, she said, leaning her elbows on the table. Len grinned slightly as he looked back down at his work. Maybe, if tomorrow night goes well, you'll get that chance.